We believe at this time that the deceased shooter, Aaron Alexis, acted alone. And we believe that Mr. Alexis entered building 197 at the Navy Yard with a shotgun. We do not have any information at this time that he had an AR-15 in his possession. The motivation, whatever that motivation is currently under investigation, and we're not going to comment on it at this time.
Look, I think right now it's an open and shut case as to what was behind this. The report that you talked about, this incident on August the 7th, where he was in a motel in Rhode Island. He was hearing voices, auditory hallucinations. He had a sense that there were 3 strange people who are obviously imaginary, trying to shoot waves through his body, preventing him from sleeping. He changed the motel rooms 3 times. This is a man who was clearly having a psychotic episode, probably a paranoid schizophrenic, clearly was somebody who needed psychiatric help. And what's so interesting about this is the police, and he called the cops. He needed help. 30 years ago, the cops would have brought him to a psychiatric emergency room. He probably would have gotten antipsychotics, and he probably would have been hospitalized for a couple of weeks. That's the way it was done in the 70s when I practiced psychiatry. But today, that doesn't happen. The cops left. He was left on his own. He was a man who shouldn't have been on his own. He should have had the state looking after him, and he ended up killing people in a way that's, look, you want to respect the civil liberties of everybody, but there is a point in which if you don't take control of people who are clearly out of touch with reality, you are damaging them, exposing them, and of course, tragically, exposing a lot of innocents around them.
At the time of the speech, did the president know how bad it was? Did the president know that 12 people had been murdered?
You know, so we had the same information you did. This was an unfolding event, and the president spoke about it at the top of his remarks on the economy. And he then went on to speak about the economy, which is a matter of central concern to the American people.
I'm just wondering, if he knew how bad it was, would he have gone forward with that speech?
John, again, we had the information that we had. You can call it a political speech. The president addressed the issue.
A political speech?
He called for Congress to, I know that it's a fun thing to do, to run everything through the political lens, but the president called on Congress to take action to ensure that we fund the government and that we don't default.
Charles, you had a strong letter to follow yesterday. I want to ask you about the gun control possibilities, the legislation push, and lawmakers talking about it. In context, you had the FBI and Congressional Research Service put out stats about these mass shootings. These are shootings where 4 or more are killed. 78 mass public shootings in the past 30 years resulted in 547 deaths. This is over 3 decades. Same time, 559,347 murders happened in the 3 decades. That's 0.1% of the total murders. Those stats coming from CRS and the FBI. In this environment, even though this is tragic and horrible, is there any impetus to move this forward up on Capitol Hill?
I think there's absolutely none, and I think the reason is not so much the political, effects of the recall elections in Colorado, where 2 state senators were defeated who had been pushing gun control, but I think it's the simple fact of the rank opportunism. Every time you've got a shooting, it's like somebody presses a button and you automatically say gun control. We know that the facts of this particular case are, you could have all the gun control you want, all the background checks you want. He would have obtained the weapon anyway, so it doesn't apply in this case. And secondly, the only way you're going to have successful gun control, which lowers the murder rate, is you do what Australia did, and you confiscate all existing guns. In the absence of that, it will make no difference, because you have a sea of guns out there that would take 100 years to actually use up and wither away. So the access will always be there in the absence of confiscation, and this isn't a country that will confiscate.
Folks here in Washington like to grade on style, right? And so had we rolled out something that was very smooth and disciplined and linear, they would have graded it well, even if it was a disastrous policy.
Would we love to get rid of chemical weapons? Yes. But I'm skeptical that this is a game plan that will lead to an outcome. And it looks more like, frankly, an effort to guarantee that Assad stays in power. And as I recall, 2 years ago, the policy of this administration was regime change.
Who cares how it came up? John Kerry got asked, well, what can we do to stop you from bombing? And he said, make the problem go away. So Putin says, okay, I'll do that. And so they say, well, this puts Russia in a position of leverage, and it guarantees that Assad is going to be in power for a while longer. That's a separate issue, but there is inherent and enduring benefit in taking a step that has the potential to rid the world of these chemical weapons.
Charles, I've heard some people say, why can't Republicans who are critical of all of this just be happy that there's not a war? The problem is there still is a war where, more than 110,000 Syrians have died.
And everybody is talking, even the former President Clinton is talking about this as if Putin said, well, let's end the problem, and the problem's ended. Are these people delusional? There is no chance in the world that we're going to get rid of the chemical weapons in Syria. We're not going to get the resolution that we want. We're not going to get Chapter 7. We are not going to get any removal of these two weapons. It's going to be an endless process. And Assad stays in power, which is exactly what the Russians have wanted. They will have achieved their objective. And Obama, the champion of the non-linear thinking, will be shown to have achieved nothing.
This has been a Sunfish production.